As the imminent threat of having to pay your own electricity bills for the rest of your life inches increasingly closer by the year, a man starts to reminisce about the roads he has walked to get to the point he is today. Joy, sadness, anger, but maybe most of all, regret. The road I stopped traversing, the road of making YouTube videos, is one I still sometimes ponder about. Gotta be honest with ya, making YouTube videos at the time was more of a nightmare than a dream, one formed through a delusional fantasy of suddenly becoming the school's famous YouTube guy, and kept afloat solely by personal grudges, jealousy, and a YouTube number chasing game. In that sense, it was kind of like love. We fall in love, and when we can't attain it, we grow bitter. At least that's how it goes for me. But you know what? Fuck the fame and the success. It's never too late to make a change, and so I did. I picked up the shovel where my past self dropped it, and once again I started digging. A promise is a promise after all. Now, it has been a few months since I fully played Tales of Vesperia, and while I did enjoy the game, I regret never having made a video about it. So here we are with one of the most popular games of this wonderful franchise, finally released from the clutches of Xbox's greed-stained hands. God, or whatever deity is up there, I personally worship the best boy. Thank you. If I try to enumerate the ways my mutuals try to get me to play this game, this video would quite literally turn into a stand-up comedy, just to give you an idea of to which lengths my friends were willing to go. It was their favorite game in the franchise permanently and nothing would be able to surpass it, yada yada yada. So with that in mind, I waited for the PS4 release, finished the damn thing in under 2 weeks, and for the next few minutes, I'll be giving you my personal experience with the game. I'll be discussing my likes and dislikes in regards to the story, characters and mechanics, and tell you where Vesperia ranks among the other Tales games I've played. Let's get to it. The first thing I'd like to mention here is that I think that Tales of Vesperia is a good game. Not my favorite, but good nonetheless. It has a cast equally interesting as they are colorful, the battle animations are the stuff of wonders. I will hunt down the person in charge of the magical art special effects and treat them to dinner personally. And speaking of hunting people down, one bad word about Estelle and just like the Duolingo owl, I will find you and push my ideology onto you. The Tales franchise has set a bit of a reputation for itself that all of their games are just very well made, to the point that even if I say the game's okay, that's still very good by gaming standards. Although I do think that Vesperia might have hit harder if it was also my first Tales game. It's not like if you have played one Tales game you have played them all, but maybe after a while the high quality of games becomes the norm and thus you find anything that comes after it less impressive. But that might also just be me. Anyway, let's take a big bite of the apple already and start with the story. A 4-part, 60-hour campaign of one man on his pursuit to fix his plunging and inadvertently gets wrapped up in major conflict, resulting in him and his crew having to save the world. For the most part, I like the story. To be more specific, I like how the story escalates. It starts in a very normal way, with a kid trying to trace down the stolen magical orb from the lower quarters water system in order to avoid that part from getting overrun by water, and the next thing you know, you're having a jailbreak together with the country's princess, who was moments away from getting assassinated. You go from place to place, each step you take adding to the mysterious events surrounding the failed water system. Part 1 of Vesperia always gives you something to think about or a destination to reach, and the closer you get to that destination, the more the story escalates. It's this kind of progressive storytelling that I really like, as we get to see our protagonist handle increasingly difficult problems. It is here where the theme of true justice also comes into play. Is it wrong to commit murder to prevent the suffering of thousands? Who should be the one enacting justice when the government is internally corrupt? And how should order be established over two entirely different clashing ideologies? These themes get heavily explored by none other than the panty wetter himself, Yuri Lowell. Part 2 kicks off hard when the game hurls even more questions at you and Yuri goes full renegade mode, doing things as he sees fit in the form of murdering the scum established in Part 1. It's not often that we see characters, especially not main protagonists, stain their hands with blood, so when these scenes happened, even I stopped breathing for a few seconds, gasping in awe the moment Yuri slashed his sword right through the throat of a major antagonist from Part 1. or coldly stared as he left someone to suffocate in quicksand. It were shocking events as it showed how far Yuri was willing to go to achieve his form of justice. If there is one criticism I have with this part, it's how they made the villains a bit too easy to hate. Would have loved to see Yuri deal with a more morally grey antagonist, for example. Wait, that does kind of... From other parts, I think it's part 2 that I consider to be my favorite. Too bad the game follows it up with my least favorite part 3. It is part 3 that I really have problems with, especially in regards to this giant tentacle motherfucker. The reveal of the Autophagos was quite an oh shit moment, but as threatening as the R34 plaything seems, it's really not. The Autophagos is supposed to herald the end of the world as a colossal monster powerful enough to incur absolute destruction, but it never felt like that in any way. To be honest, I felt more threatened by a cupcake at some point. There's no mass panic, people praying for their lives or hysteria, which might be because of ignorance, but if Earth-sized tentacles were floating in the sky, you'd bet your ass I would be screaming my fucking lungs out. Game, even if you tell me to hurry up, I can't feel that way if I can't see the repercussions of this thing's appearance. But that's not my only complaint. I think that the sudden introduction of the summoned spirits was very strange as well. Up to this point, the game has been excellent at foreshadowing major events through carefully placed dialogue and world building, but the summoned spirits feel more like a last-minute Deus Ex Machina than anything else. The only thing I like about the Autophagos and the summoned spirits is how they serve to flesh out the second theme of the game, namely, united we are strong. Lastly, part 4 was okay. It delivered the message in the best way possible and brought upon the end to this great saga, with everyone in the world cooperating to vanquish the Autophagos, giving rise to the dawn of a brave new world. But while the story is the body of Vesperia, it are the characters that form the heart of this game. I love Yuri Lowell, I really do. He is a cocky, laid-back bastard who smiles smugly in the face of adversity as he kicks the shit out of whatever stands in his way moments later. He is very different from most of the bright, smiling, energetic protagonists you tend to see so much in these kinds of games, and it makes him really refreshing. Before the game even starts, Yuri has already had his character arc, changing him from a rough around the edges knight of the state to a simple man who disregarded the imperial principles of justice in order to pursue his own form. He seeks a justice that punishes evil accordingly, by death if necessary. It makes his character a lot more mature and opens the path for a whole nother form of character arc, making him a very interesting lead to follow. Why Yuri is so beloved and such a great protag honestly and rightfully deserves its own video. I might get back on it later in the future, if I get my shit together. Also, last note, I really love his voice. Troy Baker went up and beyond with his performance, giving Yuri that little bit of extra oomph in his dialogue that made the things he said, especially when pissed, all the more powerful. Raven is another character I really liked. I normally can't seem to find myself in the renegade archetype, but the way they pull off Raven was far beyond what I could imagine the character was going to be. A broken, nihilistic man putting on a front of chestery and mockery, only to become the fool himself in most of the conversations. That never failed to make me laugh. His character arc was almost on par with Yuri's, which says enough I think. Again, the performance was elevated by Raven's voice actor Joe Thomas. Great job on his part. I don't want to spend super long on the rest of the cast, so I'll keep it brief. Carol is my son, Estelle is... well, you already know what I'm gonna do to you if you're calling her names. Judith is okay, I feel like I need to explore her story more to form a solid opinion on her. Although I do love her occasional banter with Yuri. Meanwhile, Repeat is just there as the obligatory mascot character. Would have loved seeing him getting his own personal arc, but alas, Ninja Doggo decided to keep it secret. Rita, however, I couldn't like for a rather large portion of the game. She is smart and very bratty. You see, a lot of the conversations end with her either becoming awfully tsundere or hitting Carol on the head, and while I do enjoy the occasional slapstick humor, when the same humor is repeated to this magnitude, it stops being funny to me and threads more into the territory of annoying. Although I think that me not liking Rita is partially due to the game's regard to side quests and how much info is stuffed into these easily missable story intermissions. It isn't Dawn of the New World levels of bad, but it certainly hurts the characters in some aspects. To clarify, it wasn't until I finished the Bryonic side quest that gave a lot of info on Rita and the reason as to why she sees the Blestia as her family that I actually began to care about her. She is far from daughter material though, more like an okay niece as long as you only have to see her twice a year. Tales games excel at a few things better than other games of its kind, the biggest of which being combat, and just like other Tales games, Vesperia's combat is outstanding. It runs in a silky smooth 60 FPS and delivers with some absolutely stunning animations. I especially like the magic animations, those are in of itself a spectacle to behold. I'm in love with Rita's casting animations and I'm not afraid to share it. My problem with the battle system of the later games is how they turned a bit too much into mindless button mashers, with each art comboing right into the next. This made it nearly impossible to fill a combo, and while this might sound like something positive, the gameplay consequently becomes a lot less rewarding. In Vesperia, on the other hand, you gotta work for your combos, having to combine the right set of skills and arts and mix it with your own skill. It requires thought, precise timing and a wider understanding of the game's mechanics, rather than just pressing the same button over and over again. There's a real learning curve in Vesperia as the game constantly adds new layers of complexity for the player to master, which makes the battle system ever more rewarding. And since there are 9 different characters, all with their own moveset, art animations, skills and frame data, one has more than enough room to find a playstyle which most suits them. For most of the time I played as Yuri since I'm a filthy casual, and he's the only character that I really know how to play as. But I did switch to Paddy when she was available, and while I'm not as good with her as with Yuri, she is incredibly fun to play as, having some of the wackiest, wildest arts from all the cast. Like, every part of her screams fun. She's a fun character. Frying enemies with a frying pan is slightly satanic, but fun nonetheless, and when you really dive into her moveset, she can pull off some crazy combos. The other characters were either too difficult for me to do well with, Raven and Repeat, or I didn't put enough time into to fully grasp the essence of, Judith and Carol. However, if you want a full taste of the character's moveset being pushed to their absolute limit, I highly recommend watching the Boss Medley series by a YouTuber named Passaro. Link will be in the description for that. It's not all rainbows and sunshine though. Guard cancelling, for example, can be a major pain in the ass sometimes. This might just be me being bad at the game, but I've had multiple instances where my characters stopped dead ass in their tracks when I tried performing a guard cancel, making me look like a total buffoon. So basically how I look in real life. But bosses I also have mixed feelings about, because the difficulty is alright for the most part. They aren't pathetically easy, but also not balls to the motherfucking walls insane. But the attack system felt a bit unfair at times, knocking me out of my combo a bit too frequently. Also, some of the secret missions can go f*** themselves. Without the online guide that I used, I wouldn't be able to figure out 70% of the missions, and that's just being generous. And I get it, they're called secret missions for a reason, but some sort of hint would be nice sometimes. Jaker! Taking everything into consideration, I think that I'd rate Vesperia's combat at number 4 of my favorite battle systems in the franchise. Below Hearts R, Graces F and Xillia 2. Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition is not everything what I expected it to be. Vesperia is not bad, it's anything from really, and even the minor issues like the audio balancing being very poor sometimes and the lack of returning voice actors for the new scenes, something my friend Xavier Revolutions discusses extensively in his video, hint hint, are very much bearable, subtracting only slightly from the experience. But unlike in other Tales games, there were very few moments that really knocked me off my seat. Very few moments that brought me to actual tears, and very few moments that rushed the blood through every inch of my body, having to hold my breath to prevent me from igniting the house by the otherwise overflowing fighting spirit. I admittedly am a bit disappointed about that. However, the tales that Vesperia has provided me with stayed with me far after I finished the game, persisting still to this day while scripting, editing and uploading this very video. And they will continue to stay with me. Yuri, Estelle, Rita, Carol, Judith, Raven, Repeat, Flynn, Patty. Each of them will remain as a tiny fragment of information inside of my brain, so that I can remember the camaraderie these guys shared, the obstacles they faced and the world they tried so hard to save. That's the trademark of a great game, that even when we put our controllers down and our game devices off, the characters will live on. And yes, it may sound stupid and admittedly sappy, they are fictional after all. But just like any other game, it was because it was fictional that I was able to participate in this fantastical adventure. Participate in this wonderful tale of brave Vesperia. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for getting to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, as it feeds my ego and pleases the algorithm. From now on, I'll try being a bit more active on YouTube, using my spare time that I have to work on videos and all, because I want to reach 10k by the end of the year. It's a big milestone, but yeah, we'll see how far it goes. I promise to smash a watermelon or something if I succeed, but we'll see. Anyway, that's all. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.